Kazakhstan. It is a wonderful country which became known to the world only in recent 20 years. With gaining of independence, this country is located in the very center of Eurasian continent. From Altai Mountains in the southern Siberia to the Caspian Sea and the Volga River outfall, from the east to the west, 3,500 kilometers. And from Tian Shan Mountains to the Russian forests, from the south to the north, over 1,500 kilometers. Such is the territory of Kazakhstan, which is equal to 5 territories of France and yet Switzerland. It is all continental Europe. Almost all the elements of the Mendeleev table were found here, and inimitable natural climatic zones strike imagination. But the most important and sacred here for the Kazakhs themselves is the steppe, or as it's called by geography scientists and historians, the Great Steppe, which hosted the Great Silk Road. From China to Constantinople, such are the scales of Kazakhstan for those who love figures. But for us, culture, history, and geography is more important in all the richness of human dimensions and perceptions. Kazakhstan is the motherland of the first paradise apple. It is a most surprising case when ancient legends and myths break into our troublesome everyday life, just like a fresh wind of spring from our native mountains of Altai. It is true that the most romantic parable from the Old Testament on the Paradise Garden and the first apple of seduction and the first story of human love of Adam and Eve, started here, near the foothills of Altai, in the city where you live. In the city of Almaty, which very recently used to be so tasty name, Almata. If translated directly, the father of apples, apple city of Almaty, Chain Almaly. According to the British scientists, Kazakh apple tree is the predecessor of practically all apples consumed in the world nowadays. I invite the tourists from your countries to Kazakhstan so that they could learn more about our country, to get new experience, make such new discoveries which are made by tireless scientists and travelers. Breathtaking suggestion, and along with it a scientific fact. Evidences are on the level of the apple's DNA analysis. If they suggest so in a distant Oxford, namely the botanics professor Dr. Barry Juniper and French researcher Catherine Pex.
We expected, when we collected these apples, we expected to find that the apple in the supermarket in this country was a hybrid, because almost every other crop, wheat, barley, strawberries, you name it, is a hybrid. But to our astonishment, although there are plenty of little tiny bitter wild apples in the West, the crab apples.
But how did the seeds of the first apple disseminate all over the planet? Scientists say the same way as slugs of silkworm, gunpowder, and the secret of paper production, by the Great Silk Road, by the way of distribution of culture and knowledge, by the road of civilization. Oh, the Great Silk Road! waved by the winds of centuries, legends and mysteries of human history. From the east to the west and vice versa, how many caravans and people went over it? It could also be called as the river of cultures and civilizations, by which Artophorians of knowledge swarm, anchoring in the harbors of ancient steppe cities. Near Farab, where the great scientist Al-Farabi was born and lived, who was called Aristotle of the East. Near Otrar, whose library was equal to Alexandria. Near the city of Sairan, which was founded earlier than Rome. It was here, near the banks of Sirdarya River, during antique times called Ox, the way of Alexander Macedonian and the Great Silk Road came across.
Particularly once those nomadic tribes of Kazakhstan had domesticated the horse. We don't know exactly when that was, but certainly before 5,000 years ago. And the horse from, let us say, from Almaty, can't go east because that's the desert.
Antique chronicles say that Alexander the Great shot the steppe cities by the catapults charged by apples. We can only imagine what size and what hardness were these tasty fruits if they could serve as nucleus. But it witnessed that apples were cultivated those times, and Alexander Macedonian not only appreciated their tastes, but used them as a combat leader. One of the most archaic legends in Tian Shan is a story of a pink she-bear who lost her cubs. Searching for them, she finds two human children, a girl and a boy, lying on a brushwood. Acting by the mother instinct, the pink she-bear adopts them like her children, and in order to calm them down, she tears off the tree the fruits and feeds them. Children stop crying. This ancient fairy tale reminds ancient Turkic legend of a she-wolf and a boy from whom the first Turkic tribe of Ashin has started. Let them be distant and fairy tale-like, but these coincidences are striking, and the nucleus of the legend is one and the same: a man and an apple. And the rest is in the hands of providence, if we speak the biblical tongue. If we are not too religious, it is important to realize that mankind started from proto-human, all modern races of apples from the seeds of wild apple trees of Alatau foothills. By the way, in opinion of that very English scientist Barry Juniper, it was bears who spread the seeds of the most sweet, and that means the best fruits of wild apple trees from Tian Shan to Caucasus.
Before human beings came into the Tian Shan, for millions of years there must have been huge populations of bears. And bears, as everybody knows, have a wonderful sense of smell, and they like sweet things. And they'll eat any sort of fruits and vegetables. If they can, they'll catch fish. If they can, they'll catch animals. But what have they got in the Tian Shan? The answer is they've got a lot of fruit. And bears don't like working any harder than they have to. So bears will always pick the biggest fruit, and they'll always pick the sweetest fruit. And the result of that is, in the end, you finish up with something that's big and sweet, like that.
Here we have the mythical pink she-bear, which finds herself in the range of purely scientific explanations of that earthy miracle which we call apple, in our case, Almaty Aport apple. One of the most disputable and contradictory themes in the history of religion and morality is no doubt the theme of Apple of Temptation, related to the first sin, the guilt of Adam and Eve before God. Honestly saying, we should think why, despite the ominous role, the apple itself stays the most widespread fruit. Today we have the right to think that apple has to be praised, since it was the reason of Adam and Eve discovering a human love in all its sweetness, and that the story of the first feeling between the man and the woman started from apple, and possibly the one which grew in one of the paradise places of Zailiyski Alatau, on the background of snow-white peaks, alpine meadows, and indescribable wonderful Tanshan fir trees. This virgin beauty of foothill landscapes need to be seen just once to say that it's a paradise place, paradise garden. Especially in the beginning of autumn, when among the branches Balestine red apples Almaty apport, weighing over 200 grams each, and recently quite common were the fruits weighing 400–500 grams. And now, let us come back to the Silk Road. Legendary Attila left his traces on the Great Silk Road, who was called the Whip of God, although, as we find it nowadays, everything was not quite so. Except his famous raids over lands of ancient Bulgaria and Hungary, Attila stood against barbarians and Gothic tribes from German forests and protected Constantinople and Rome from truly barbarian invasion, and his meetings with Pope became a symbol of peace between Christian world and cavalry nomadic civilization. The same Silk Road buried another conqueror, Genghis Khan. Being on the hunt near Balkhash Lake, he fell from the horse and had to stop the military raid to the west. Coming back to Mongolia, he died, and he was by the legend buried near Junggar-Chain, on the border of contemporary Kazakhstan and China. There, they say, is his tomb, full of innumerable treasures which still cannot be found. This is one of the mysteries of the Great Silk Road and the Great Steppe. Maybe one of the travelers who will visit this wonderful place full of legends and mysteries will be lucky enough to discover one of the secrets of the Great Silk Road. Please come and try. One of the most popular female names in Kazakh steppe is Alma. It has a sacred meaning, not just an apple, that is Alma, but also addressed prohibition to the supreme powers. Alma, that is in Kazakh language, do not take, preserve it for me, for life, for love, and name Everter. In general, name Alma and the apple itself is one of the symbols of fruitfulness, as in the nature and in the meaning of numerous children. Alma means fruitful bride, wife. In many folks, including Slovenian in Turkic, the young people were gifted apples, wishing many children, and the bride and the bridegroom were given a half of apple each, and they had to be eaten completely and at the same time. There were also many tokens related to an apple tree. A pregnant had to take the branches of blooming apple tree. Birthing mother was put an apple under the pillow, and near the suit they threw the seeds of apple. To chop a fruity apple tree was a blasphemy. The period of apple tree blooming was considered to be a special time. The wishes were offered by flowers, and of course people just contemplated it as Japanese enjoy the blooming of sakura. Apart from the religious tradition, apple was the symbol of chastity. It was help against barrenness, so in pagan beliefs apple was rather a sign of concord and happiness, but not a notorious apple of discord. However, let us think what was the main reason of dissemination of our famous paradise apple from Almaty all over the world. Of course, availability of bears was important, who distributed the seeds all over foothills. Undoubtedly, still more important was the Great Silk Road, and Almaty city and Chain of Almaly were very significant staging posts. being in the very center of the Great Silk Road. It is all clear, but the secret was in the natural climate conditions in which the first wild apple trees appeared, which were the primogenitors of the modern apples. The one who visits the foothills of Alatau for the first time will see unbelievably beautiful land. He will understand what is the zest, so to say, of the ancient apple tree. Wild apple trees grow by wide bar from the mountain's foothills to the level of 2000 meters in the mountains. The amplitude of temperatures and conditions of humidity in different time of a day and year are very striking by contrast. Not any plant or tree will survive here, but our tree, ancient apple tree, has adapted and similarly well felt on all levels and in different conditions, from a hot summer to a severe mountains winter, on sunny and sunset slopes of giants and chains. And it is surprising, our apple tree distributed not only through the seeds of apples, but it would learn to vegetate from the roots, going from the stem to many meters through stones, sand and soil. Such a miracle was our progenitor, wild apple tree. And of course it had various fruits in various conditions and by various slopes of one kind. Therefore, it worked for thousands of years of its strong survival, such a rich genetic heredity that it was enough for the whole planet and all known races in all the continents, including famous English races such as Bromley and Granny Smith and many others. So our country has all the rights for the title of Paradise Garden and motherland of the first biblical apple, love of Adam and Eve. Possibly motherland of the first people is located near Almaty. Come and see.